Alright, this is John Kohler with growingyourgreens.com. Today we have another exciting episode for you, coming at you from my beautiful backyard garden here in late June, actually. And so you guys can see, here is my moringa tree. Basically, I planted the moringa, and be forewarned, I'm in zone 9A, right? And moringa is a tropical fruit tree, so if you have like a zone 10, it would just love to live there pretty much year round. In my zone 9A, it gets too cold during the winter time. Below 40, this tree does not like it. It basically kind of like all the top growth, and here's the old top growth. The wood basically loses its life, and then at some point, the wood will stay alive. So you can see this white wood is not alive. As we go deeper down, you can see it kind of has like more of a green tinge to it. That's when the wood is still alive, and then every summer, actually, it sprouts out new growth. So that's what we're seeing here. This is the new growth for this summer, and it's late June, and this thing is already pushing like 5 feet tall. That being said, you know, this single tree, which has been alive for now about 4 or 5 years, just doesn't produce enough leaves for me to eat. It has a single up growth. Sometimes it has 2 or 3 per year, but I never have enough leaves to eat, so I really want to fix that issue. And I don't want to plant another moringa in the ground because I have limited space. So what I'm going to do in this episode for you guys is share with you guys how to do high density moringa planting in a pot. And I'm going to go from like beginning to end to kind of show you all the techniques, everything you'll need to learn to have the healthiest, most bountiful moringa in a pot. Now with a pot, what you're going to do is you're going to grow it outside once the weather is reliably above, I would say, at least 60 degrees. And then you're going to bring it inside in the winter time, inside your house that you're heating, so the plant doesn't get too cold. And then you could actually bring it back outside. So this is probably going to be the best way to grow moringa for those of you guys that don't live in a zone 9 or that live in a zone 8 or below. I mean, you could, of course, try to grow moringa, and if you do want to grow it in a zone 8 or below, I would at least like cut it down before it gets too cold and mulch it really heavy and hope that your ground doesn't freeze and the root ball stays alive. That being said, growing in a pot is the best way, especially for those of you guys that live in apartments or condos or don't have a lot of space. Maybe you just have a patio on the back. So anyways, let's head over and share with you guys how I'm going to select the pot, the soil mix I'm going to use, how I'm going to plant the moringa, how I'm going to harvest the moringa, everything you're going to need to know about moringa. Alright, so now we're going to go over how to plant moringa into a pot. But before I get into that, I really want to talk to you guys about the moringa. Like, to me, moringa is straight up a superfood, right? You could buy moringa superfood powder at health food stores. It's usually, unfortunately, been dehydrated and, in my opinion, oxidized a whole bunch. So that's why I encourage you guys to grow your own, and you can have it fresh. Like, you just pick the little baby tender growth there, which is so tender, so delicious to add into salads. You could cook the more mature greens. Of course, my favorite way to use moringa is actually in a juice. Link down below to my video where I share the best way to eat moringa is actually to drink it, because now you can literally concentrate the nutrition into a juice. And moringa is a powerhouse of nutrition. It literally has 7 times more vitamin C than oranges. It has 3 times more iron than even spinach, which is what Popeye ate. It has 4 times more calcium than milk, right? Why drink milk when you could eat moringa leaves or juice leaves and get your calcium in a nice beverage? It also, of course, has neuroprotective effects, meaning it protects your brain. It's also an anti-cancer plant. It has the isothiothionates, or the BITCs in there, and can help detoxify your liver. It is just one amazing plant, and I'm glad I could show you guys now who don't live in the tropics, who can't grow this year round, how you guys could just grow it in a container. Now the biggest thing I want to tell you guys right now is that you're not going to grow these into tall trees. You're going to grow these into shrubs. That's the most important thing, and that's how I'm getting away with literally planting 4 1-gallon pots into a bigger pot behind me. Each one of these 4 gallons, you guys can see, literally has 4 to 5 moringas planted literally 1 inch apart. And so really, commercial harvesters that grow this, they literally just chop the tree in half and they harvest all the top growth. So that's what you're mainly going to be doing, is when it gets too tall, you're just going to cut the tree in half. And you don't have to cut them all in half at once. You could cut half of them in half at once, harvest the top half of half, let the other half grow, and then you could keep cycling. I'm harvesting these, you know, 8 this week, and next week I'm going to harvest the other ones, and by that time the other one's going to start to throw out new growth again. So that is really my goal, plus also because I am growing it in a container, I am going to be putting it in my front yard that gets significantly more sun than my backyard that is shaded out most of the day. Alright, so that's what I'm doing, and let's go ahead and bring you on the journey. So I was like started to, you know, do this off camera, and I'm like, you know, I should really make a video to show you guys my specific process for planting up moringa from a pot. Oh, and I do want to mention that these moringas were sourced from peony growers in Ripon, California. I saw them at the Alamany Farmers Market in San Francisco, and these were actually put in my luggage and checked in, right, to bring back to Vegas with me. I'll put a picture up right there so you guys can see what it looked like packed in my luggage. I literally put plastic over the tops and I taped these down to the luggage itself. So even, and then I put some cardboard in there so even if it tipped over, right, these wouldn't get crushed. And they survived and made the flight. Checked in. Normally I'd only carry on plants, but I didn't have room actually, so I had to check them in. But yeah, these checked in on the airline, and they're growing great. All right, so anyways, on with the show. So now we have 3 pots here to plant the moringa in. Which pot am I gonna choose, right? We have a 15-gallon pot that they normally put like fruit trees and other trees in. This is definitely a taller pot, a little bit more narrow. With a 15-gallon pot that's a little bit more squat, but it's has a lot more width on the top. And of course, we also have the big jumbo size 25-gallon pot that may be a little bit taller than the 15-gallon right there, about the same size, but a lot more fat and wide, all right? So I always encourage you guys to choose the largest pot you are able that holds the most amount of soil, especially when planting this many trees or plants in there. If I was making a vegetable garden and I was just growing some annuals or something like that, I would definitely want to use this pot because I have a lot more surface area on the top to plant more vegetables and fit them in. That being said, because I am growing moringa, and how moringa grows is that actually they have long, deep tap roots, provided you grow them from seed, which all of these are from seed. If you grow them from cuttings, then the roots kind of get all, you know, like grows like not a tap root. It grows differently, so I don't recommend starting from cuttings. If you guys want to do cuttings and just put them in your ground for experimentation, that's great. But, you know, to have a nice established tree, you should start from seed for sure. And in this case, I'm gonna choose the most narrow pot that is the deepest, because I want to force the moringa, you know, roots down. I would love to have a pot that was even deeper than this, but this is all I was able to get. If you guys visit your local nursery, sometimes nurseries will sell pots for inexpensive, like the nurseries here do. You know, this pot was just a couple bucks, actually, so that's a great way to get inexpensive pots that have been used. This formerly had some heavenly bamboo in it, and now I'm going to be putting some heavenly moringa in it. All right, so let's go ahead and go through the process of how I'm going to pot these moringa babies up. All right, so the first step I'm going to do is, you can see on the bottom of this pot there's these large holes. So what's going to happen is you're going to water your trees, and then the water, if you do water too much, it's going to come out these holes. Because these holes are very large, it's basically going to end up leaching out soil. And this is going to have to be on my front porch, so I don't really want all the soil to come out. While you could put some kind of netting or screen mesh or old, like, you know, window mesh, which I don't have any extra right now, I'm going to put some organic matter in there to help hopefully prevent this from occurring, so the soil from the pot doesn't come out of the holes. So what I've done, and this is the point that I was doing it, and then I was like, I should make a video. So basically what I got in here is I got a mix of pumice stone, and this is the larger grit pumice stone. Not big rocks, I mean, you could use rocks, but I want it small enough to filter, but not super big and chunky and have a lot of space. And then I mixed the pumice rocks actually with some coconut coir, and I wet that down. So, you know, I did that so the coconut coir will kind of like absorb the moisture before it comes out and also hold the pumice stones together. I don't know, this is just something I came up with. You guys don't have to do this, and this step is really optional, but I just don't like stuff coming out my holes on the bottom. So what I'm gonna do is we're just gonna go ahead and take handfuls of this stuff, and I take a handful and put it right by each hole and then pack it in. All right, so I got all that loaded up. I don't know if you guys could see in there, but I basically made a donut ring right around the edge of the bottom. And I wet down the coconut coir so it kind of holds a bit more firmly in place. I don't want to tip it too much because it starts to move. And then once we have this donut ring in the bottom, our holes are protected from, you know, a lot of grit coming out. Now we're gonna go ahead and mix in our soil blend. All right, next up, we're gonna go ahead and mix in the soil blend that I'm putting in to my moringa pot. Now, you know, here's the thing, if you guys are like noobs or whatever, just go down to your local, hopefully not a big box store, but actually local nursery, and ask them for a good, well-draining potting soil. The moringa should grow easily in a potting soil. I would add, of course, additional compost to that potting soil, and maybe even, depending on the potting soil, additional items in there that'll help the drainage. The worst thing you could do for moringa is actually plant it in clay soil. It really likes a well-draining soil that doesn't stay wet, right? You want the water to kind of rush through there. It gets some water, and then the tree's like, I'm dry. That's what it likes. It kind of is like basil, where you don't want it wet all the time. And moringa is actually best watered when it's completely dry, and it'll let you know. You could feel the soil, so you want the soil to drain out really quick. You want some organic matter in there, but you want to, you know, have a nice balance of organic matter, so something like sand or perlite, or in my case, what I'm using today is I'm actually using the pumice stone. This is a fine pumice stone. Pumice is actually a volcanic style rock, and this is going to provide a better drainage as well, also space for the microbes to live. So you want to get a good potting soil. I like the Dr. Earth's brand that seems to be available many places these days. I would add probably some additional, you know, horticultural grade sand or pumice. You could also use perlite if you couldn't find the pumice, so it drain really well. Also, it'll make your pot a little bit lighter. The perlite is nice because it's a lighter texture, whereas the pumice is a lot heavier, so it's going to add a lot more weight to your pot. So if you have to move your pot in and out, you may want to put it on wheels. I'm just going to lift my pot up, carry it in and out because I like to build my muscles. And so yeah, you just want to fill this with potting soil and then get growing. That being said, I just don't buy potting soil because I have so much soil around my garden. So what I do every time is I plant my raised beds out. You guys can see one of my raised beds here, and it's got actually okra I got to harvest now. It's got peppers I got to harvest. It's got some tomatoes growing, as well as my bele or salad tree. Anyways, I basically use a bulb planter, and I pull out a bulb planter worth of soil to put in my transplants, so I don't have to like dig up the ground that much or disturb it. And then I usually get left with buckets of my raised bed mix that I have to pull out. So, you know, that is what I'll be putting in the bottom of this. Of course, if you don't have raised bed mix, because this raised bed mix has been grown in previously, so it has good biology in there. It also has all the different nutrients that I'd want. Plus, it also fills the bottom half of the container, you know, so I don't have to use like my more expensive mix, high quality mix at the top. So that's what we're gonna put maybe for like half of this container here. As you guys can see, it actually has lots of the perlite in there, so it's gonna be really well draining. All right, so in addition to my raised bed mix, we're just gonna go ahead and dump in some more of the pumice stone in there. I want to make sure I have something really well draining for my plants. So well draining is important for the moringa, but of course, like most plants, aeration is also critically important, and the pumice will also help with the aeration as well. Next up, we're going to go ahead and put in what's in this bucket. And this bucket is a whole hodgepodge of really high-end ingredients. I'm not really going to go into how I made this mixture here today. However, I will put a link down below to my video on how I basically make this. This is basically my bed topping mix. So at the end of every season, I top off my raised beds with a super nutritious blend. And in this blend specifically, it has some local soil, so soil from my property here that I've mixed in, along with my homemade compost, along with some commercial compost, along with 2 different kinds of worm castings, rock dust, soil humates, as well as black insect frass. I also put some perlite and pumice, vermiculite, and some coconut coir as well. That's what's in this mixture. Once again, link down below on my video on how to make that. You could make that mixture and then actually add it to a potting soil, which would probably be really good. This also has some of my existing raised bed mix that I then put through a 1/4 inch sifter to sift out the small stuff, so it's actually just going back in. So it's basically been re-amended, all right? So this is gonna be the bulk of the mixture here, and I'm probably gonna even dump this in. You guys can see it really kind of looks like potting soil. We're gonna dump that in to the level, and then I'm actually gonna go ahead and then add in more of the small grade pumice. I really wanna make sure this is well draining. All right, so as you guys can see, I'm getting close to the top. So what I like to do is I like to just take the plants that I'm actually gonna plant, and if we set it in there, I want to always plant the plants at the same height they're at. So I want to probably bring up the level just a tad bit more. All right, now we can check again to see where we're at. All right, I think we're pretty much at the right level. I want to have like 1 inch from the top, so I can kind of pool some water in here when I water it, and let it soak down. So, I mean, it's pretty easy. You just get the right pot, get some good potting soil, maybe amend it with additional nutrition, and then you're gonna plant your plants. So when planting my plants, probably the main thing I'm gonna do is super important. You wanna get this stuff called mycorrhizae. Basically, there's all kinds of different beneficial mycorrhizae, endo and ectomycorrhizae, as well as bacteria in this. These are the beneficial creatures from the food soil web that are gonna help solubilize nutrients and break down the organic matter to provide nutrients for your plants. And I don't use commercial fertilizers. I allow everything that I'm putting in there is rich of worm castings, biology, rock dust, trace minerals, carbon, and it all needs to get broken down by the biology so that I don't have to like fertilize my plants every 2 weeks. They're gonna, be feeding themselves based on the soil, based on the microbes. And so what we're going to do now is we're just going to go ahead and tip this over. And we're going to take a look at how the roots look in here. Oh man, look at that. These are really nice roots. Look at the nice development on these roots. They're not all impacted yet. So then we just take a little bit of mycorrhizae and we just dust it on the bottom. And then I'm just going to go ahead and set this in place. And then I'm going to do that 3 more times for the 3 additional pots. All right, here's the last set of moringa going in. I basically kind of spaced them out so that there's a little space in between them, like a finger's width. And then the next step is we're just going to go ahead and backfill with my soil mix, or if you're using potting soil, you're just going to backfill it. All right, so there you guys have it. I basically potted up my 4 1-gallon pots that had 4 to 5 plants per pot into one giant 15-gallon with my soil blend. Of course, adding all the nutrition for the moringa plants so they can thrive. Also added lots of that pumice stone so we could have good drainage. Final step, of course, is to water them in. All right, now I'm gonna go ahead and move this in place. Now, I started with moringa transplants today. If you guys want to start your own moringa, then I would recommend using a heat mat with basically like a seed starting dome. So you want to basically put the moringa seeds in like a seed starting mix in the little dome tray thing on the heat mat and just leave it there, and they'll germinate usually pretty good for you. And I really love these transplants I bought from peony growers, because normally when I see moringa, for sale. Like, the plants are really nice and leggy. And so these plants are really looking nice. And once again, you know, I'm going to let this kind of settle and get used to the pot, get used to the new space it'll be in, which is in the front of my house, which gets a lot more sun than the backyard. And then I'm probably going to go and just literally chop these in half. I'm going to chop half of them in half and let them sprout new growth. Now, you do want to make sure you have a lot of growth nodes before you start chopping them in half. So you want to let them get sufficiently tall. I'd say minimum 2 feet, 3 feet would be better. And then you could kind of get that cycle going. You chop them in half, and then they're gonna put up new upshoots and continue to grow for you. And then, of course, before it gets cold, you're gonna pull it inside, grow it inside your house, and then you could put it outside. This way, you could have a continual supply of moringa year-round if you don't live in the tropics. Now, the other thing, very important, right? Especially when plants are in pots, people want to like love their plants in pots. Moringa grows with very little care. How you're gonna kill your moringa is by giving them too much love and too much care and too much water. So very important, right? I mean, if you're super anal, you could weigh your pot out now so you can know how heavy it is, but basically I like to use the pot test. The pot test for me is I just take the pot and then I just push it and I could feel how heavy it is, right? So I'm feeling it, how heavy it is now, empty, and because I put a lot of pumice in there, this is quite a heavy pot. I'm gonna go ahead and now put it in place and then water it and then feel how heavy it is. So I could feel the difference between it being, you know, more dry, which is like this weight, right? Or more heavy when it's fully watered down and wet, right? Then what you could do to know if you need to water or not is tip your pot. Like, I mean, this is some good exercise for you too, but if like you can't push it over because it's super heavy, you know there's still water in there, it's still really moist, doesn't need water, hold back on the watering. And of course, if it's really light, then you know you can water. Of course, you could also check the soil and see, you could get a soil moisture meter, stick your fingers in there. That being said, you do want to make sure the water is deep, not just super shallow, because the moringa likes to send its roots down deep. And just in these little 1 gallon pots, the roots are already down to the bottom, not quite wrapping around, but ready to go in to a bigger pot. So I'm really glad to be growing moringa, high density, where I'm just gonna keep it clipped back and in my front yard, so I'm actually walking by it every single time I enter and leave my house. So I'll see, oh, I gotta cut those back, and then I will end up eating more of them instead of being in the backyard where I don't have a lot of new growth on it, because I usually got 1 or 2 main growth tips, and it's the growth tips that I'm really after. So by having 18 growth tips, I'll be eating a lot more moringa this year, and hopefully after watching this episode, you'll know how to grow it high density, harvest it, plant it in the best soil, and grow it year-round as well. If you guys enjoyed this episode learning how I'm planting out my moringa and how you can do it too, please be sure to give this video a big thumbs up. More importantly, be sure to share this video with other people so that they could start growing their own nutrient-dense food at home, the moringa that even has more potassium than bananas. Also, be sure to click that subscribe button right down below so you don't miss my new upcoming episodes. I'll be coming out every 5 to 7 days. You never know where I show up or what you'll be learning on my YouTube channel, what new farms I'll be visiting, or what new projects I'll be doing in my own backyard. Make sure you click the little bell so you get notified as my new videos come out. And finally, be sure to check out past episodes. The past episodes are a wealth of knowledge. Over 1,700 episodes at this time, dedicated to teach you guys all about how to grow your own food at home. I put some other links down below to some of my other favorite moringa videos I've made in the past for your viewing pleasure. So with that, my name is John Kohler with growingyourgreens.com. We'll see you next time, and until then, remember, keep on growing.